Alrighty, I'm once again fairly sick, so hopefully I'll be able to get through this script with minimal issues. So yeah, as a tiny follow-up to my fairly well-made and worth-watching video essay analysis on Akane I I did a little bit back, there's an important aspect to Akane's character tropes that I didn't talk about that much, and that is her shared traits with Junko. Most of her connections to Junko are almost certainly from back when her character served a different purpose in the story, but her tropes are still meaningful to the character she became. To explain, Junko's most obviously observable character trope is that of the gyaru, or gal. Gyaru is a slang Japanese term that is basically the Japanese pronunciation of the English word gal, and it refers to a subculture of youth who have certain fashion trends and that tend to represent an almost anarchist kind of worldview, kind of cultural view, like any punk subculture. Gyaru are girls who often dress in a provocative and unprofessional ways. They tend to have like knee-high socks is very common, short skirts. Basically anything that you see in what Junko and Akane both wear is consistent with Gyaru fashion trends. They usually make these fashion statements out of a rejection of chastity-based societal expectations of women, like how a punk will intentionally defy a school's dress code, for instance. Now, Gyaru exists as both as a real-life subculture in Japan and as a trope in fictional media that is kind of representative of the subculture, but it is like its own trope, basically. Like how Angie is like a parody of media trends of mysterious foreign islanders, but in reality, Polynesian people actually do exist and obviously aren't these like extreme caricatures. So, there are expectations for what a real-life Gyaru person would be, and expectations for a Gyaru character in an anime story would be. Now, Junko's ideals can be viewed as an extreme and bizarre interpretation of Gyaru subculture. They reject societal norms, they reject authority in existing structure, they intentionally dress lazily and sloppily, and intentionally have bad manners and such. Of course, Gyaru is also a fashion trend because it just looks cool, so Junko is... other people have adopted Gyaru fashion ideas purely as an aesthetic and not as an actual act of rebellion against society. So Junko is a famous model. She's a fashion model. She would, of course, fall within this category. She's adopted Gyaru fashion trends. You know, she's both a fake Gyaru, like a performative Gyaru, that's just applying the fashion style, and a weird, real Gyaru in her bizarre, nihilistic mentality. Now, what is the difference between a Gyaru and a Kogol? Because the terms are used very interchangeably a lot of the time. Well, technically, if we're talking about real life, they could refer to the same thing, however they carry different connotations. They represent different trends in fiction as well. Kogol is basically like just saying Gyaru, but as an insult in real life. Real Gyaru people would refer to themselves as Gyaru, not Kogol. People who hate Gyaru subculture would refer to them as Kogol. Now, Gyaru / Kogol fall across a spectrum. On one end, you have girls that just want to dress cool, and on the other end, you have girls that just represent a conflict with authority and a desire to express themselves without being told how to act and how to dress by society or any source of authority. On the other hand, Kogol are often associated more with seedy activities, the criticisms of Gyaru subculture, like drugs, prostitution, lack of inhibitions, lack of morals, etc. In anime and manga and such, Kogol characters very frequently have tanned skin. Getting an artificial tan is one part of Gyaru fashion, but this is much more of a taboo thing to do in Japan. Like, the bright majority side of society will happily accept pretty rich models wearing Gyaru-inspired fashion designs, but in the same way that they won't like it if you bleach your hair, they won't like it if you have a really heavy artificial tan either. As such, this aspect is often associated with Kogol more so than Gyaru as a term. if you read a lot of hentai, you should know that the tag Kogel basically almost always just means dark-skinned girl in any particular like mangaka work that you're reading. That's how Kogel as an anime trope differs from Kogel as a real-life term, mostly. All that shit aside, Akane is, of course, like this is the difference, is because Junko is what you would probably refer to more as a gyaru, and Akane is what you would refer to more as a Kogel. Meaning, she's extremely similar and basically refers to it, the similar concept, the same concept as Junko, but with this different connotation, and thus different focuses on the idea. Junko as a gyaru refers to an accepted member of society that is praised for dressing in high-level fashion inspired by pop culture gyaru trends among the youth. Akane is a Kogel because she actually does just dress like that, because she actually does lack in inhibitions. She has engaged in prostitution, even though she doesn't really grasp things like that. She's improper, she lacks modesty and respect and such. She is everything that, like, conservative Japanese people would criticize about Kogels. I basically already talked about how Akane is a twist of this trope, however. She's not a Kogel because she's strictly shameless or anti-society. She's actually, overtly accepting of society. She accepts, like, hardcore capitalist ideas. She accepts rampant poverty. She accepts existing laws and concepts with no question, no criticism of them, and so on. She just lacks the social awareness to recognize that what she's doing is considered shameless or improper in certain instances. She's upbeat rather than brooding or edgy. Kogels are generally stereotyped to be lazy and unwilling to work. Like lazy, shitbag youth punk assholes, you know? Stereotyped to be freeloaders living off of their parents. But obviously Akane is kind of the opposite of that in certain ways. She is kind of lazy, but she also can only rely on herself and is completely self-sufficient. Akane both embodies the trope in every sense, but also defies it in every sense. Kogels are criticized in society for being materialistic, hedonistic, greedy, idiotic, shameless, promiscuous, and Akane is all of these things. But not exactly. Hell, Kogels, societally speaking, are even accused of being particularly critical of men, of being hyper-feminist, right? Or in a negative sense. As well as being ageist and rejecting the older generation, which we can see from how Akane only criticizes and insults like the old man who helped her become a gymnast, and she is crafted to be exactly what people criticize about gyaru/Kogels, as well as everything Kogels are often portrayed as in fictional media, because it is a trope of Japanese media, which is usually largely fetish-based, dark-skinned characters, explaining why Akane has such an overtly sexy figure and appearance. Akane is everything criticized about Kogels, which just makes her that much cooler for how great she is despite all of that, right? Like, she's not a leech on society. She works to earn a living for herself and her siblings. She's an extremely talented professional athlete, great asset to society and the economy and the sport itself. She's not a whiny complainer. She's not a freeloader or anything who just whines about her circumstances or anything, who just rebels against the system without trying to engage in it. She blindly engages with the system. She's a cheerful and inspiring hero who ignores her unfair circumstances, doesn't even consider them as unfair circumstances, and pushes on to improve her life as best she can. She's not an ineffectual loser falling into a toxic trend. She's this force of nature character. Her circumstances as a character are so unique and result in such an unusual human, you know? Like, no one else, no normal human being could be the same way that she is due to her unique circumstance. Like I said, I explained in my analysis video how her supernatural ultimate level talents and instincts result in an extremely unique life. They gave her extreme personality traits that are very unusual for normal humans, just like how Kamida is a one-of-a-kind result of his life experiences from his ultimate level luck talent. Every negative trait Akane has is also a positive trait in another light. Everything has more meaning than it seems. She represents so many powerful ideas for how to tackle your own life struggles and existence. She can't be compared to anyone else. She exudes light. She is something She's something else, and you can't sum her up as anything less than that, anything more simplistic or comparative than that. She's everything that is levied as criticism against people who might be called Kogos, but she also proves that you can be all of these things society tells young girls not to be, and still be an incredible person that doesn't have the same negative results as those criticisms would warrant. They might say that Kogos represent a degradation of the quality as members of society, or that Kogos, ruin their own femininity. But Akane emboldens her own femininity regardless of what gender norms are applied or expected of her. She's that much more of a powerful woman because of who she is, rather than less of her personality and choices. So, Akane was clearly originally meant to share a much closer connection to Junko through the embodying a slight variation of the same trope. I really do love that we got the Akane that we did get, though, so I'm glad it all worked out the way it did. I really do think that Akane is a social commentary on the issue of Gyaru's and Kogo subculture focuses on. It's pretty great. I generally agree with the messages that Akane's inherent contradictions provide. I agree with Gyaru's subculture on a societal level, like confirmation to societal norms, gender norms, that sort of thing. People can criticize the elder generation and their ideas and their sense of control over society, but people can criticize the state of economics and capitalism and such, but at the end of the day, I think that while all those criticisms are valid and should be studied, we should be critical of these things, I think that you also need to look out for yourselves and engage with what you have access to. I think that even if you have a real reason to consider yourself a victim, even if you're one of the most victimized people imaginable, if you're in a horribly unlucky situation, an unfair situation, there is still nothing to be gained for yourself or for the situation or for the future of other people who might deal with a similar situation by doing nothing but complaining about it. You have a duty to yourself to still try your best even if it's blatantly unfair, and keep rolling your dice, I guess, until you make it work. And enjoying the process, enjoying what you can out of it. Only then, after you succeed at capitalism, can you start making things more fair for future generations. The world physically can't be fair. Humans can only attempt to make things more fair than they were before, and you have to kind of rise above that unfairness as best you can. Akane is one of a kind, but at the same time, all of her greatest strengths as a person are actually fairly easy to obtain. You can just be an idiot. Sure, Akane has all of these gifts and powers and such, all these supernatural abilities, but her most important trait is that she just goes out, gives it a shot, isn't afraid of what will happen, consequence, failure. She's too stupid to see tragedy or unfairness in a situation. She's too stupid to see the bad things that happen to her as bad. She's stupid enough that she can just enjoy life as she experiences it. You can go through a shitty situation with a smile on your face and the attitude to just get through it and keep trying and enjoy what there is to enjoy. Enjoy the where you can have fun with it, ironic sense of humor about it. It's not hard to be an idiot. Anyone can be an idiot. Don't just lay down, give up. There's no reason to. What else is there besides trying to overcome the inherent unfairness? You can criticize it, but you don't give up. You keep trying, you roll your dice, every effort that you can. We should improve society somewhat, yet you still participate in society. Curious, I am very intelligent. There's something else that I didn't talk about in my original video, and that's the clear parallels and inspiration from Hakufu Sonsaku, the protagonist of Ikitosen, Ikitosen is a famous old manga/animated series where a lot of popularized a lot of combat tropes and anime punk stories. Had a lot of tropes. It was old. It's a popular. It's not like it's old enough that it's not super well known now by modern anime consumers, but it was influential for its time. It'd be stupid to say that it completely originated any of these tropes, and I don't know anime history well enough to say where any of these tropes particularly originated in the first place. But yeah, Ikitosen is just a series that was influential with these kinds of cartoonish tropes than how they became lauded in the years to come. And it has a lot of other influences in DR2. For instance, the 4 Dark Devas of Destruction, Gundam's hamsters, are most likely a reference to the 4 Devas of Nanyo Gakuen, which is a thing in Ikitosen. So Ikitosen, it's a story about schools. Like it's a goofy like where Japanese schools and high schools represent like great nations of Japan in like the Edo period. It's a very common anime trope for that era of anime and manga. Rival schools, the video game, is a perfect example of this. With more modern people might be familiar with rival schools, where there would be some sort of like sanctioned school versus school battling among the students somehow as like a major staple of culture and power in society, even though it's like presented like a very punk thing. Anyways, Ikitosen is where the different schools with their respective punk fighters represent these ancient historical Japanese war figures and conflicts reenacting moments from history, and it's all like fist fighting and stuff, like just punk street fights, but the characters implement like some goofy supernatural stuff casually, like paralyzing people with certain strikes, hitting nerves, or putting curses on people and so forth. It's an ecchi series and a punk battle series. It's highly sexualized, and the protagonist, Hakufu, wears a very similar outfit to Akane and has a very similar personality. Other characters in the series constantly describe her based on her massive chest. She's referred to by the other schools by a nickname that is just a pun off of her huge tits. Hakufu is an energetic and generally happy person, but she has a temper that will flare up in certain cases. She's often so stupid that she doesn't even grasp the severity of like actually dangerous situations. Often when serious things are happening, she will be completely tonally oblivious. Her mentor and trainer is a perverted old man. Her main motivation is to just fight strong opponents just for the fun of it. She has no deeper reason for that. She's super shameless. At one point, one of the episodes, she just like rips off her clothes and goes like jumps into a river for swimming in front of a bunch of people, like totally naked with no perception of what's happening. In terms of skill and experience, she's fairly strong, but not like that strong, not the strongest character. She's very much still an amateur, but she has a lot of potential, and she has the soul of the ancient warrior that she represents from historical Japanese culture, basically. So she has like this superpower she doesn't have control over or knowledge of that makes her extremely strong, and takes control of her when it needs to in order to make her achieve victory. This is described as a powerful soul, and it's also described as a force of fate. She shares the fate of this person's soul that represents the history reenacting itself. Because the history she represents in Hakufu's case, she embodies the soul of the warrior Sun Ce from China. I don't think I'm pronouncing that right. She can't lose because it's her fate to survive and win in these situations and eventually die in this situation or whatever later on. This fate manifests itself as power and influence. Now in Hakufu's case, it's presented as something that manifests as like a demon, like a possession. Needless to say, this character was clearly used as inspiration for Akane. Remember that Akane was conceived as a character for her to be the main antagonist of SDR2, or at least a major antagonist. As such, she's based off of an extremely powerful protagonist of this famous series. Now, of course, this is a deconstructive subversion, so they have clear differences as well. Hakufu is a shonen hero, just like Akane embodies those tropes, but Hakufu is much more of a typical shonen hero. She loves her friends, she gets attached to people very quickly, she cares about people, unlike Akane, so on and so forth. This comparison, I feel, lends evidence to, like, everything that I said in my previous Akane video, where I suggested that Akane's talent is an innate, omnipotent instinct that she has in her body that guides her and gives her abilities beyond what she has worked to physically earn. Her innate force of instincts just gives her the information, gives her all this shit that she needs. She has a latent superpower that does all of her work for her. Now, in watching Ikitosen to do research on Akane, I have to say, at least the way I see it, this is a clear commentary on this characterization. I say that because I felt the same criticisms while watching Ikitosen. It's kind of like the dissatisfaction you would feel while watching something like Fairy Tail, and the characters just get arbitrarily stronger because of an unexplained magic power of friendship bullshit, and it doesn't feel earned. When I watched Hakufu just inevitably lose a fight and then tap into her superpower that takes control of her body and makes her stronger, it doesn't feel satisfying that she's powerful, that she wins the fight, because Hakufu didn't work to achieve this power. She just has this cheating fucking backup that does all the work for her. Now, granted, this is part of the story. It's not like this is ignored. They acknowledge this fact, and that Hakufu is not responsible for her victories, and this is an aspect of the story and character. But in Akane's case, this is a criticism of that concept. Akane's talent of her perfect gut reactions, her perfect instincts, and excellent physical skills did all of her work for her in her life. She's never had to develop herself in any way, which is why she hates working hard, because she's never had to work hard. Her talent is a crutch to her development and a cheap way for her to achieve success. Unlike Hakufu, who does try to work hard and improve herself throughout the series, Akane's talent is all she's ever known. It's been there from birth. Like Komaeda says, these people are born with their abilities. It's their fate, just like in Ikitosen, where certain characters, important people, are born with souls of historical figures whose fate they are bound to follow, and they cannot escape from. Akane is great, and I love her to bits. You know, she has more to her, in my eyes, than most normal characters. Not necessarily in terms of how detailed her motivations or themes are or anything. I mean, there is a lot going on, but the concept of her, I feel, is powerful, personally speaking. I'm not sure how to describe it. Like, her main value doesn't come from an academic understanding of her characterization, some fucking egghead like me detailing all the little nuances and the patterns of the writing concepts and the meta shit, but just as a concept, as an entity that takes shape in my perception. Akane represents a powerful idea. I don't feel that I can really compare her to other characters, and there are characters that I find charming, that I think are emotionally resonant, that I think express fascinating, complex ideas, characters that are just really cool, characters that are funny and entertaining, characters that are endearing to root for. None of these things, I think, strictly apply to explain the appeal of Akane. She's just, like, fucking awesome, man. Like, she's less of a person and more of like a personification of awesomeness. Flaws and qualities all wrapping around themselves in this ambiguous theming that doesn't strictly explain or simplify what is good and what is bad about anything. And existential pondering on what the true value, of any end goal of any of these flaws or any of these strengths should be. And at the end of it, positive or negative, all of these traits, as good or as bad as they can be, they're awesome. Like, regardless, the end result will be something incredible. And that's the only thing that I can really say with certainty when judging Akane. Is it right for her to simply live a life where she does what she wants and feels surface-level happiness because of it? Should she hone her natural gifts? Does she have a obligation to society or to herself, or more than what she feels like just doing in the moment? Is there an ethical dilemma, and even if there is, does that necessarily matter? If she's satisfied, is that enough to her existence? Is that what matters most? Nothing can be criticized in an ironclad way with Akane, but at the same time, nothing can be praised with complete certainty. But at the end of the day, good, bad, or some complexity between them, the only thing for certain is that whatever aspect is being judged is awesome. It's a powerful concept. I really think that most characters with extreme traits like this just end up feeling like pandering, like Mary suing to an extent. All of their extreme qualities feel forced and difficult to view as authentic. I never feel impressed by a character because they have an extreme talent or are really powerful or artificial personality traits or anything. A character can easily be written by a human, by a writer, to be perfect or insanely flawed or anything like that. But this combination of influences, I feel, makes Akane's power feel far more genuine, in my opinion. And as such, I feel some sort of awe towards her as a character that I don't feel towards most powerful characters, or strong, or characters with any extreme strengths. This also comes down to the fact that her characterization is derived from the supernatural. It all stems from her ultimate talent, her omnipotent survival instinct, her soul, her fate that guides her, whatever, that has shaped her into a person that no normal human being could be, you know, while still managing to feel valuable and relatable to real life. Take like, take like a Marvel superhero, for existence. Comic superheroes, not the cinematic universe ones, strictly speaking. It's very common for Marvel superheroes to have, like, human struggles that are created by their supernatural experiences. Like, Cosmonaut, like Marcus said in one of his videos, they tend to view their powers as a curse rather than a blessing, rather than them being gods among men. However, when there's a supernatural human struggle brought about by supernatural circumstances, it's almost always due to the might of that supernatural occurrence. Like, Spider-Man has a duty to be Spider-Man and uses powers for good, and because of that it impacts his real life and his personal relationships and eats away at a lot of his free time and such, and I mean, he affects his mentality. I mean, he is afraid of dying. He does have fear as a character. Or for like a DC superhero, you have superheroes that have character struggles based around their superiority to all other people. I'm not really explaining it very well, but Akane is interesting relative to these, is an interesting person born of unique supernatural circumstances because her superpowers mainly affect her because of the things she cannot do rather than the things that she can do. Because her gut makes decisions for her, she's never developed her thought process or brain, she's abnormally stupid and naive as a result. Her superpower is creating a unique internal conflict because she's capable of doing less than what a normal person is. Not more in most circumstances, due to how much her superpower allowed her to survive without developing herself in the ways normal people would have to. This is an interesting take on a person with superpowers who experiences a unique conflict because of it. It's also interesting because Akane would never be capable of understanding any of this herself. You know, she would never see all of these messages and ideas and lessons from her life experiences. It's only up to us, the viewers, to observe and learn from them, while she lives in complete ignorance of all of these concepts. All of this adds up to a character that I can't feel can be called a Mary Sue or shirk due to her extreme traits or personality or messages being considered contrived. Even in-universe, she can only be viewed externally. That's what makes her character feel like it has more weight compared to any other extreme characters or superhero characters in other fiction that I feel like feels more like a writer making a character to fawn over specifically in a very simple way. Does that make sense? There's a limit to how well I can explain my perspective, because it is quite, I do just have quite of a personal built-up attachment over time to Akane. It's difficult to translate this kind of, adoration into words. I wouldn't be able to use some physical evidence and explain exactly why I feel differently about this character from many other characters that have similar traits that I could explain. It's just how it is. It's just how my way of looking at the characters developed over time. In my original Akane video, I feel like I explained the academic reasons why Akane is interesting as a character, but it's not so easy to put into words why I feel why I like her more than the rest of the cast, for instance, or like why it feels more significant than just the lines in a script written by a writer to make some entertainment or express some understandable theme. The most I can say is that gray areas, not like fake moral gray areas. A lot of media try to present moral ambiguity in a false way where they basically just create some extremely simplistic moral dilemma, like the trolley problem or anything. You know, like if they just show you, if the point of something is to be ambiguous in a story because the answer isn't supposed to be clear. But a lot of stories try to create ambiguity by shoving a scene that you've seen a million times before. These situations are not ambiguous because you've already considered them at length. They don't make you consider new ways of looking at complex situations, they just feel repetitive and boring. Instead, something like Akane, once you understand her better, she doesn't feel like a simple problem that you've seen before, nor does she feel like the answer to the ambiguity is obvious. It feels like she's an honest portrayal of complex situations that have yet to be truly explored, and that people have yet to arrive to a definite conclusion about. She's a reconstruction of tropes, so she's breaking away from the standard attempts at ambiguity to create something fresh. It feels like the creator is on the same page as the audience, that they are also exploring this new, fresh idea for the first time, and therefore it doesn't feel like a writer making an artificial Yas Queen type character to be consumed in a particularly simplistic way, or for a character to be criticized in a simplistic way, like the writer's taking advantage of the popularity of a trope. It doesn't feel manipulative, so you can let your guard down and really see it as the new ground that it is, without the constant lens of thinking that it's all intended by a writer. It feels like actually considering something authentic. Anyways, like I said in the original video, my only lingering disappointment with Akane as a character, that other characters in the series, in the DR series, have that she doesn't really, is I don't think she's super funny moment to moment. when you play the actual game, she comes across... I don't think her jokes land very well. A lot of her jokes are kind of eye-rolly and cringy and kind of repetitive at times. Like, I was watching Ikitosen to do research for the video, and I started to think that Danganronpa is weirdly bad at writing comedy based around just purely incompetent characters. Because I think Hakufu, the character Akane is based off of, Hakufu, at least moment to moment, is way funnier and way more endearing than Akane. Like, the snap, like, manic stupidity that she embodies in each scene is really, really engaging. Ikitosen is a story where combat prowess is valuable as well, and where Hakufu being oblivious to the seriousness of a situation doesn't necessarily feel like a side character wasting your time or pulling your attention away that should be ignored. If Akane were more endearing and had more compelling dialogue moment to moment and funnier comedy, it'd be the total package. Everything you could want. Anyways, that's my addendum to what I talked about before in my previous Akane video. See ya.